everyone back to Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross, where I am your host and we are your resource for education, connections, and collaborations to support you on your wellness journey. Now, when I met my sponsor and guest speaker today, and heard his incredible journey and the amazing mission that he is on, I knew we just had to have him on today's show. And I know I could not do it justice, so we're going to let the video here for you do the talking.
My name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is my story. The images you see are those of hope and healing. They are also the images of my story, my training for the Appalachian Trail hike in 2026. But more on that in just a bit. First, my backstory. I'm a disabled U.S. Marine combat veteran. Between 1996 and 2021, I made 5 suicide attempts. I'm diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. I have hallucinations, depressive episodes, and as you now know, suicidal ideations. My 5th suicide attempt in 2021 was followed by a heart attack in October of 2022. This is my story. The good thing, this is not the end of my story. After my 5th suicide attempt, I began to rethink my life. That is, if I didn't make necessary changes, I would not survive another attempt. I have a daughter, and I was not going to leave her full of questions, anger, and confusion. Part of the solution was to make friends, build new connections, have real conversations, and learn to share in the experience we call life. I started the Question Guy podcast to create those connections and share people's personal stories. Today, I host the Trail to Transformation podcast, a podcast I like to call a podcast for veterans by veterans. It's a show dedicated to helping veterans find real value, reclaim their identity, and establish purpose in their life. After my heart attack in 2022, I made significant changes to my lifestyle, my diet, and my exercise routine. The images you see in this video are that transformation. In chaos, we were going through COVID and really walking through the tail end of COVID with the quarantine. And in all of that, I had lost my job. So I had lost my teaching job, and I was unemployed for many, many months. So going on almost a full year. And I had attempted suicide for the fifth time. I knew that if I were to do it one more time, I was going to make it. I was going to make it work. And so, in order for that not to happen, I needed to make some changes. And for whatever reason, the first thing that I thought I needed to do was to connect with other people, to make real friends, have what I call now is my cheerleading squad, or just close people close to you, who I know well and they know me well, in order to kind of get through the stuff that we call life. And so from that point, I created the Question Guy podcast, which we just heard,
Mhm.
and that was really the catalyst for the healing and the transformation and the pivots that I've been making the past 3 years, 3+ years. They were the conversations I probably needed to have a long time ago, but I'm having them now. And it was through those conversations that I learned to live vicariously through other people's victories. And it wasn't till I heard enough that I was able to own my own story and share my own story. So really, tail end of 2023, 2024 was really when I became confident enough, vulnerable enough to say, I, I I'm not okay, and I need to share my story.
Yeah. And I'm glad you did, because I know there's so many out there that suffer in silence, and mental health has always been a huge issue. I'm a veteran myself, but I didn't even realize how high the suicide rate and stuff was with veterans until a couple of years ago. And I'm not sure that it's getting better, but I think it's important when we have people like you that are willing to share that journey, because people need to know that they're not alone. They're not the only one feeling that way, right?
True. And I think, I'm not quite sure what statistics you were looking at, but I think as of 2022 or 2023, the Veterans Administration kind of posted some data saying that on average, at least 22 veterans died by suicide every day. And so I don't know if that number is increasing. I know it's not decreasing at this point,
Right.
but there's some significant variables, significant issues that really do need to be addressed. And if we don't do it now, that number can only get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how was your experience with PTSD? Has it shaped your understanding of the challenges that veterans are faced with today?
Well, PTSD is one of those things, I guess, or mental health in general. Unless you own up to it, you kind of sweep it under the rug, right?
Right.
You kind of ignore, because sometimes you don't even know, where are these nightmares coming from? Why am I having, what I now know are hallucinations? Where are these images coming from? And even though, if you were to go back to, my college days, I'm a social worker. My first degree out of college is social work. So I understand what mental health is. I understand the treatment modalities associated both in therapy and in psychiatric medication. But that's only a piece of that. Unless you really know it, you ignore it. But it was all those days where, God, do I really have to get out of bed? Or how many days do I need to be lonely and have feel no value to my own life or to life in general? So it's all those things that kind of wrap themselves together that really create this fog, this emptiness within inside me. It wasn't until, last year, 2 years ago, like I said, that ooh, that's something I deal with. Ooh, that's something else I deal with. I finally made the decision to go to therapy. I'm diagnosed now. Officially, I'm diagnosed with all these list of symptoms and these disorders, I guess you would call them, according to the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Um, so yeah, you don't know it until you own it.
Yeah, because it sounds like if I'm understanding you right, you had a background in this where at one point in time you may have been able to help others, but when it actually happened to you, there was seems to be a disconnect.
Only because I think because of stigma. One, I'm a man. Two, I'm a veteran. And there's lots of value to that. Men aren't going to own up to weakness, right?
Right.
Um, at least socialized in here in America. I'm a veteran, so I'm not only am I a veteran, I'm a Marine veteran, and so you suck it up. You go forward with life. You don't deal with the emotional side of life because that's not what we're taught to do. That's not what we're trained to do. And if I were to go back even before, my days in the service,
Mhm.
it's not anything I knew to do growing up because, you know, parents were divorced. And what do you do with that? There was nobody to really kind of talk about. And, 70s and 80s, we don't talk to kids about too much in terms of, how you're feeling, how you doing.
Yeah.
We kind of just expect them to kind of grow up, and that's what I did. I grew up, but I grew up dysfunctionally.
No, and even I think today, even when people sometimes ask, "How are you feeling?" or "How are you doing?" It's like some robot question or response. It's not like they're taking the time to stop and truly listen, or really wanting to know how they're doing. It's almost like just like polite conversation kind of
You,
topic.
and that's that was brought up in. I'm on LinkedIn a lot,
Mhm.
and that was kind of brought up in somebody's post or whatever. And my response to kind of that ideology, that idea, we're afraid of what the answer might be. You know, we kind of do it robotically as a courtesy,
Mhm.
but we don't really want to know, and we may be even afraid to know of how somebody else's day actually is.
Yeah, and we're not saying everybody's like that because I know me personally, if I'm asking someone how are they doing, it's because I care and I want to know. But then again, some people are either comfortable or not comfortable, or they just want to put on that brave face and just say I'm fine when they're really not.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But it's okay and it's not okay, meaning that Sometimes you need to get through the day, and sometimes, as long as the situation is comfortable, as long as the other person, this is kind of what I teach now, as long as the person asking the question has created this safe space, and I don't just mean safe physically,
Right.
but maybe emotionally, psychologically, and I'll even add spiritually. If they've created this safe environment where an actual response is warranted and can be given, you're not going to get the response, the honest, authentic response that you may be wanting. The person asking the question has to create that space for the other person.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And that's why for me, I love creating what I call judgment free, spaces, because people have the right to feel and go through what they're doing. Just because, you may not understand, you can ask questions to better understand, but it's not our place to judge somebody for what they're going through.
absolutely, absolutely. And we don't know. We all hide behind masks, we all hide behind walls. And so when you give somebody, you give somebody that question, and they may actually go and say everything's okay, but the human nature behind all of our interactions is so truly evident. We talk without saying any words at all. Our eyes talk for us. Our body language talks for us. Our silence talks for us. And so as long as you create that space, as long as you create that space, you give somebody the opportunity to kind of share their story.
Yeah. And I'm glad you are sharing yours with us today. Like I said, I think it's very hopeful. So, can you tell me, in your view, what are the most significant barriers that you think that prevents veterans from seeking help for mental health issues?
There are some barriers. Like I said, maybe socialization more than likely is one of them. Pride being another. After that, it's really going to be dependent on the individual. How well were they raised to experience their own emotions, experience situations, talk about those situations. Now, not every family, is really comfortable in that space. I know mine wasn't. But what we're dealing with now, if we're really dealing with, on average, 22 veterans, and there's millions of veterans out there, if we're really dealing with 22 veterans a day choosing to end their own life for whatever reason, it could be PTSD, it could be having lost their job, they could be going through a divorce or having just been divorced. And it doesn't matter if they're male or female, young or old, doesn't really make a difference. What they need is somebody to listen to them. Even if they're just being superficial in their conversation, you know what? Those conversations lead to other conversations. And so, like I said earlier, I needed to have conversations. I needed to know what the rest of the world was doing. I needed to know, I needed to find those people who had gone through their own stuff. I'm doing best with my vocabulary. Had gone through their own hell and had come out the other side victorious in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't matter the process, doesn't matter what the outcome was, but they found victory, they found change, and they were willing to tell their story. And so when the question guide kind of developed, and this is kind of one of the original podcasts that I had, it was giving people that opportunity. Now, COVID didn't, corrupt everybody's life. It
Right.
was a facilitator. It was a facilitator of change. If we were to go back and look at it in a very positive way, yes, people had lost lives, they had lost jobs, they had lost money. We did lose a lot. But for those people, those special people, those significant people, whom I guess the universe or fate was guiding me towards those conversations. I mean, you could have said, no, I don't want to have a conversation with you, Keith. But for those who did, guess what? They saw all the hell that they've been through. They saw an opportunity to do things differently. And like I said, it was listening to all those victory stories. It was listening to, the fear, the anxiety, the overwhelm. And then they said, you know what? I'm going to beat this. And they may have chosen yoga or some other practice or whatever, prayer. They may have invested more time with family. Again, process doesn't make a difference. They invested in themselves. And so when I heard that enough, when I heard it enough,
Yeah.
it made sense.
Would you say sharing your story and your journey has helped you to heal or is helping you heal?
Yeah, absolutely. So there isn't any doubt there. And I think that's part of what we have to do as people. We know that story is how we learn, it's how we connect, it's how we associate with other people. When we hold it in, and again, going back to psychology, when we hold things in, we hold energy in. We keep up this barrier that doesn't allow, and I'm going to use the word energy, but it doesn't allow energy to flow. And so when you're able to put words to your emotions, put words to your thoughts, put words to an experience, that releases much of that stuff that gets stuck inside. Hey, you know, I attempted suicide. Hey, you know what? I attempted suicide 5 times. You know what? I've cried in the closet many, many times. How often do you hear a grown man say that he's cried? Hid in the closet and cried. And when I came to the point where I could actually share that, that was liberating. That was completely liberating because we call men who cry certain words.
Which is wrong, but yes, yeah.
We minimize the experience. We minimize what they're going through. And so when I was able to share that story, and the more I was able to share it, that first time was kind of, you know,
Mhm.
the second time it's a little bit better. And now I freely share it. I freely share it on my own conversations, and I freely share it on other people's conversations, such as this.
Yeah. So, and like you said, there's the stereotypes of what we all think men, should be like or should do. And like you said, it doesn't help because if you know the military, you are taught to adapt and overcome. It's not necessarily to a question. You just, like you said, shove stuff down and move on. And that's not necessary. Then that's not healthy.
No, it's not. But there are, and especially I think for the special forces than for the
Mhm.
regular troops when they go into a combat or a forward situation, I think there is some level of debrief and even psychological eval to making sure that you're okay. And I don't know if it's specifically with a trained psychologist or psychiatrist, like I'm no longer in the service, or if it's simply with a trained chaplain. I'm not quite sure, or somebody in a chaplain kind of capacity. But more and more, those things need to happen. And I really think that if we gave it its space, and no, it doesn't have to be full disclosure. You don't have
Mhm.
to say, I couldn't sleep last night because I was thinking about somebody killing me, whatever. It doesn't have to be full disclosure. It can just simply be, you know, I still think about X. I still think about Y, and I don't know what to do with it. If somebody says that, a veteran or service member, somebody says that to you, then that's at least a starting point to kind of do some more investigation. And then when you recognize that maybe it's a continual pattern of nightmares or hallucinations, or just really, that negative overwhelm that kind of shuts you down on a day-to-day basis, that's really when you got to say, okay, well, maybe this is something that we need to deal with. We need to get some additional help. We need to have other conversations with professionals in the space who can actually help you. And so, and the reason this is becoming more important is, even though I've made 5 suicide attempts, I have conversations with family members who have lost somebody by suicide, whether they be veteran or not. It doesn't make a
Right.
difference. And the fact that there, the stigma around that, just committing, or sorry, dying by suicide,
Hmm.
there's a vernacular around that. Um, it leaves such an impact on the people left behind. It creates chaos. It creates confusion. Creates doubt and fear in a way that you wouldn't think, like a normal, maybe a death by cancer, or death by something that you can kind of prepare for. Somebody's dying by, or dementia, or whatever that is.
Right.
Suicide is sudden. Suicide is hidden. Suicide is unexpected. So when it happens, people don't know how to deal with it, but then recognize that, oh, I should have recognized this sign, or I should have had this conversation. They become full of fear and regret, and then they own the other person's death. And that's another conversation altogether. So there's a lot here to unpack, but this is probably not the space for that.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, and there is, but yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people have had those questions, struggles. I know I lost someone that was a friend, and that I had got to know pretty good, at least I thought. And we were talking one day, and the next day I had somebody calling me, telling me that he had took his life, and
Mm.
yeah, I was floored. Like you said, that it has an impact, you know. But so, can you describe to us a moment that sparked your transformation from struggling with the suicide thoughts into becoming a mental health advocate?
It probably came after my heart attack. And so, I'm learning about various aspects of life in very much its spiritual capacity. If that's okay to kind of add that to
Hmm.
this conversation. Um, the 5 suicide attempts, the fifth suicide attempt really sparked the need for change. And so I needed to change how I did things socially, how I interacted, how I had conversations, who I had conversations with, being comfortable in my own skin, and being able to kind of transform, the metaphor, the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Going through that transformation process was the starting point. But to really step into an advocacy role came when I almost actually really died. And it wasn't my fault this time. Well, it was kind of my fault, only because how I was treating my body. Now, I always call myself an athlete, but I'm not. I don't get paid for it, so I'm not a professional athlete. It's a whole lot better. It sounds better than an exerciser. I love to exercise,
Right.
so I call myself an athlete. So, to give context to this, I'm short. I'm 5'5". I'm 55 years old, and um, I have a very tiny frame. So, from a male's perspective, there's some ego into how we kind of look and present to the world around us. And so for me, that was like, I wanted to be big and bulky and strong and muscular and all that kind of stuff. So I trained for that. I did heavy lifting downstairs. I still did cardio. I did my walks and stuff like that. So I was kind of balanced. But I would consume all kind of food. I would just, as long as it's from pork. I'm not pigging out on Subway sandwiches all the time, but I'll eat fried chicken, gravy, and all kind of stuff. And I was consuming whey protein, protein shakes, and I was big. I was bigger. I was
Right.
160 pounds, given my frame. But I didn't know, with all of that stuff, I was killing everything on the inside. So my kidneys were checking out. But it wasn't until the heart attack that, that's the big awakening, right? You
Hmm.
you oh my, if you've never felt a heart attack, when you literally your whole chest area feels like it's been run over by a semi, oh my god. That is probably one of the worst pains, physical pains, other than I guess being sliced open, Anyway, I don't want to get grocery.
I can only imagine.
It was really painful.
Yes,
that
definitely.
was the eye opener. So it was going into the hospital, spending 4 days in the hospital, and the doctors saying, you're lucky to be alive. Let's start there. You're meeting dietitians, you're meeting nurses, and everybody's kind of going through all this stuff. Okay, the catalyst for change was I never want to have a heart attack again. Never ever want to experience
That kind of pain.
that kind of physical pain ever again. But it was also, I'm still an athlete, so I still have this idea that my body responds well to physical movement. It just responds well. I just need to figure out what that new movement was going to be. Um, I like endurance sports, and so I always wanted. I'm an asthmatic. I've always liked, thought about running a marathon. Not running any marathon anytime
Right.
soon, and my knees can't handle that. So I did the walking thing, and now I do the hiking thing, and it was the combination of all of that, the heart attack, the physical
Hmm.
training, the conversations. I had up to 7 different conversations, 7 different podcasts, um, suicide, men's mental health, social change, conversations of victory, people's personal stories, people's professional stories. All of this started framing me in a very different way. And because of my mental health background, it became really important to kind of bring other people into those conversations, to kind of what's going on with your life? What are we doing as a society at large here in America or worldwide? What are we doing as a society to kind of address this issue rather than it just being a mental health problem for mental health professionals? I found people who thought like I did. It's a societal problem, and society needs to talk about it, and we need to talk about it in a very different way. Started having those conversations, and so that's really where the advocacy. It was kind of all of this coming around together, which brings us to this conversation.
Yeah, and doing a trail of transformation, that trail you're about to take on, you'd have to love endurance and the hiking and the walking.
Well,
That is quite the undertaking.
sometimes I wake up and I still think I'm insane, but it's part of who I am. So can we talk about that a bit?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
so we did watch the promo, the GoFundMe promo. So behind me, I think you could see it. I think your viewers can see it.
Hmm.
There's a book called Walking the Path: A Leader's Journey. It was written throughout 2022. It was published December of 2022, and it's a combination. It's a leadership book, but it's really a personal development type of book, and so it kind of mixes the academic with the fable, the narrative. And it's about this young man who it feels confined by his community, his family. He has to live a certain way. I took technology out of the picture, so they live on a farm. They're very basic in nature, and he doesn't fit in. He wants to, the whole valley, the whole village is surrounded by mountains. So, in order to escape his life, what he knows, he's got to go cross the mountain. So, in all, as I started kind of walking again, 2 days after my heart attack, right?
That's
Doctors,
impressive.
well, no, but I can't even tell you that's what you need to do. I know my body. And so I wasn't going to like lay around for, there's lots of stories here. My doctors hate me.
No,
My
no, I
doctors,
agree with you because we ignore our body too much. Your body actually screams and tells you what you need to do, and you listen. So I admire that.
well, I appreciate that, but the Western medical team, at the very least here in America, where it's going to say when you're injured, you stop doing stuff. You literally rest what has to be healed and you let it heal. No. So that literally meant at the very least, don't do any cardio for at least a month and or probably more. And like my cardiologist told me that 2 days after my heart attack, I'm walking 5 miles again. Well, again, listen to your doctor.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know to listen to me because I've been training my body for its entire life. Since I was 14, I've been running and exercising. So I kind of been more in tune with my physical body than probably a lot of other people, unless you are athletic in some way, shape, or form. In 2024, I had blisters. My, given all the hiking I'm doing, both of my feet swole up. So they're swollen, and I'm trying to figure out what in the world I don't understand. The solution was buy bigger shoes. So it was a simple, but they're swelling, and so they're rubbing against the shoe, and they're getting blisters, and it's driving me nuts. So I wore a size 8. Now I wear a size 9.5. If you kind of get the idea.
Yeah.
Um, a couple months later, so summer, tail end of summer, going into autumn. Uh, I come back from a 20-mile hike in the trail state park here, First Landing State Park, because I'm in Virginia. You do things normally every day, right? You go take a shower every day. So what do I do this one day? 20 miles. I'm Italian, so I kind of talk weird. Um, I slammed my left foot, the small toe, against the bathroom door, and so now it's broken. It's like, what in the world? And so I knew it was broken, but I went to
Hmm.
the doctor, he confirmed. 2 weeks later, he confirmed it because it took 2 weeks to kind of get the x-ray back. I don't know what's going on there. I knew it was broken, but what I really wanted was a whole bunch of pain medication so that I could go back out on the road and walk, right, with my 40-pound back. He gives me something that doesn't even work, some opiate that doesn't even work. So ibuprofen worked better than that. So I'm back on the road doing my 12 with a broken toe, only because I know that my toe is going to heal because I'm pushing energy through it. So
Hmm.
Reiki is another conversation altogether, and we don't have to go there. But I'm pushing energy through my body and my foot. I know it's going to heal. I just know it's going to probably heal slower than if I rested. But there's no time to rest because I've got a hike to go on. I got the AT to go on. Like November, December 2024. Um, I get respiratory infection, which then spread to my entire body, which somehow impacted my legs. And now my right calf is all cramped. And it's not, the cramp goes away. This isn't going
Right.
away. So now I'm dealing with, we're kind of healing from the toe, and now I'm dealing with my right calf that's just painful. And so I don't want to, overdose on ibuprofen. I kind of want to minimize that. So I'm kind of dealing with pain tolerance when I'm hiking. And again, now I'm doing a 45-pound, backpack. So, but then the solution to that was, as we learn and experience and we do trial and error, was I started taking magnesium, right? Now I'm on I'm taking an amino acid supplement to kind
Hmm.
of build the muscles better. And I changed my backpack. And so I'm now using a different backpack and actually a military grade rucksack, which carries the weight differently than a typical your average
Yeah.
backpacker, where everything's kind of centered in the pack and you kind of figure out how to pack it. This kind of has compartments. I'd love to do so. It's a Terminator outlet, so it's a great backpack. So with the new backpack, with the magnesium, with the amino acids, I actually carry the weight better than before. And so it's actually easier to hike 12, 15, 20 miles than with your traditional backpack. And so trial and error, learn as you go. So all that's good. But I think we need to go back to the whole advocacy part was all of this stuff kind of coming together allows me to kind of talk to people about the healing aspect of nature, getting in touch with your spiritual self, having conversations with like minded people who you know, like, and trust.
Right.
All of these things together have transformed my life. So it's not just one variable, it's not one aspect. It's like the combination of everything I'm doing is putting me on the right track. That's
Yeah.
a big monologue. That's a lot of monologuing.
It's
Sorry.
no, it's okay. It's like you said, you're learning, you're adjust, you try different things. But yeah, and we can go there. I fell one time, broke my pinky. It stood straight up, and I just pulled it, popped it back in, and I was going to go back to work, and it started swelling, and then I wound up having to go down to Fort Carson. Yeah, the doctors were not impressed with me that I did that, but I set it in just fine. But I mean, when I landed, it was straight up. I'm like, well, that ain't right. And I just I've done that with toes too, but toes I know they're just going to tape together, so I just pop it back in and tape it together. I don't bother going to the doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can't tell people that.
No,
We need to
no.
tell people.
People need to listen and do what I'm saying is people need to listen and do yeah, what they want
Because we're
what they
not doctors.
it's
Well,
our
I'm a
no,
doctor.
you are, but it's our body, our choice. So, but getting back to the veterans, it's tough for them a lot of times to deal when they get out to deal back with the civilian world. So, how can civilians better understand and support veterans that are dealing with those kind of traumas?
To start, we need to give them space. Because truthfully, unless you've served, and especially if you've served in either a combat or a forward area, you're really not going to. Most people don't get shot at. Now, given what we're dealing with in America, um, that truth may not be as true as we hope for. Anyway, when you sign up for service, especially in the Army, Marine, Special Forces, Navy, um, you're going to be expected to, especially nowadays, to serve in a forward area, to serve in a combat area in some way. Most people are never going to understand what that means, and that literally means 24/7. Your anxiety is heightened, and I'll just kind of leave it there. Your adrenaline, all of that, even when you're maybe in the garrison or in civilian away from the combat situation for a couple of days to kind of you know rest, you still know your body and your mind still know that you're not in a normal situation. And so those experiences, that experience, most civilians, most people aren't going to know and understand. So to help veterans kind of readjust, what I found based on other research data is that that first 12 months post service, so as soon as you step out of, you know, the gates of whatever base
Hmm.
that you kind of been working on, you have your DT 214. Those first 12 months of transition are essential, are key, are make or break. And I mean that by saying we need to give veterans, and we need to be proactive. Civilians need to be proactive. Mentors, mentors in different ways. So there may need to be a spiritual mentor, a pastor, a priest, whatever that looks like, whatever that veteran is most comfortable with. Heck, it could even be, somebody who reads tarot cards, whatever that looks like, whatever they're comfortable with, whatever that spiritual space is. Approach and give them that space to be in. Job, difficult, high level of expectation. Your manifest is, this is when you wake up, this is when you're having lunch, this is what you're doing at X time of day. You know, that regimented experience is by and large gone in the civilian world. We create our schedules, and we're expected to do so.
Right.
Especially if you've got a college degree. I got three of them at this point. We're expected to kind of know what to do in a work environment. right? And you set the tone. You're just given some task, maybe a project or whatever that looks like, and you're expected to do it. So you have to now, for some reason, manifest this project management. You have to channel project management skills from somewhere, right? You got to create this on your own. You have to learn how to use different technologies and tools.
Yeah.
Partnerships, spouse, family, friends. Looks different, looks very different. Service, non service. You now get to choose who you hang out with, right?
Yeah, where you weren't
That,
given choices before. Now you have options and you have a choice.
yeah, like if you're on a ship or a boat, and there's two different things if you're in the Navy. You're hanging with the same people for 6, 7 months, maybe 8, 9 months at a time while you're on deployment. If you're on base, your platoon is, your bread and butter. These are the people that you work with. These are the people you hang out with. Civilian world's not like that. You get to choose. And sometimes making those choices, we don't know how to make those choices. Veterans may not know how to make those choices because everything was given to them. This is kind of like it's the package deal.
Right.
Now you have choices to make.
And it can be overwhelming for some of them.
Mhm.
So, what advice would you give to veterans who are struggling with that and with mental issues?
There are 3 steps to the advice that I would give. You have to be comfortable with your own story. You have to, at the very least, start monologuing like I do a lot here. Tell it to yourself. Tell yourself what's going on with yourself on a regular, if not daily basis. You wake up and you ain't feeling the best. Tell yourself. Just be honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, you're not going to be honest with other people, and you're not going to get the conversation going. So be honest with yourself. And if that means like a real quiet conversation with you while you're having breakfast or watching TV or whatever, brushing your teeth, have that conversation, even if it's a 2-minute conversation. I feel really yucky today and I don't want to do anything. Okay, cool. At least it's out there. You can build on those conversations, but that, of course, is
Right.
again something else. Um, find the people that you trust. Learn to trust. Big hurdle. Big hurdle. Find people that you can trust. That may or not be your spouse. That may or may not be your children. But find whomever. At least one, preferably more. If you could get that to 5, you're doing good, especially at the start of this transition period. Um, Trust meaning that you can talk to them about what you just talked to yourself about, and you are willing to answer any question that they may have. You have to become vulnerable. So, but these are stages. And then get yourself involved with something, not drugs or alcohol or anything like that. Get yourself involved with an association. I'm a member of the American Legion. If that's not your thing, that's okay. And it doesn't have to be veteran related. If you want to go join a bowling league, get yourself involved in something where you're interacting with other people. Essential, capital E, essential. There's nothing that's going to take the place of you interacting in a very, harmless, whatever. Be involved. Be involved with life again in a way that satisfies you, your wants, your needs, your passions, whatever. For me, it's I, I specify who I hang out with, who my close friends are. But I do. I hike a lot. Nobody's going to be going out there hiking 12 miles a day. I do that in the morning before anybody else is even awake or alive in my neighborhood. And on Sundays, I do 20. Now, there are people out in the trail and they're going to say, what's that crazy thing you're carrying on your back? But that's it's the catalyst to get a conversation started. So there are other I live in Eastern Virginia. We actually have what's called the Tidewater Appalachian Trail Club. So there are people in my local area who have hiked or want to hike the Appalachian Trail, either in part or in whole. And so I haven't joined yet, but I will. What I'm saying is that get yourself involved. So three things: have that conversation with yourself, find people that you trust, get yourself involved as as the foundation of kind of helping you through the junk that is our life.
Nice. Well, we have 4 minutes left. I know time flies. I know we can go on like forever. Um, so tell us, I have the GoFundMe code up here. So tell me how we can best support you. Cause I think it's incredible because you're getting ready to take on this trek in what, 2026, right? In April?
So the original goal was to do it in 2025. I've postponed that out of respect for, I think some of the trail, if not all of the trail, is open at this point. Hurricane Helene back in September of 2024 kind of devastated parts of the Appalachian Trail, North Carolina high country, and Southern Virginia mountains area. So just, and I know some people who live out there, and so out of respect just for the community at large who have lost
Sure.
homes, lives, and businesses, it also allowed me to kind of do some additional preparation, and I think it's a good thing. Uh, Now that I've kind of worked through some of these angst in my body was giving me, to kind of reframe the strategy. So launch date right now is April 1st, 2026, pending any you know national catastrophes or hurricanes or anything like that. Um, all donations good. I am looking for sponsors. I really want to make this a community effort. Now, do other people hike the trail? Absolutely. I tend to uh, walk rather slowly. Like I'm short. I've got some physical disabilities as well as my psychiatric disability. So I may not be hiking with a group, and probably not. So my intention is to take it at my own pace. This is my hike. Get it done within no more than 5 months. Um, the strategy is very specific, very clear, and all monies go at this point. All the initial monies go to help me, buy the gear, buy the food. If I have to have any emergency medical, take care of that on the trail, in the town near the
Sure.
trail, whatever that space is. And so I'm looking to raise 20,000 at the very least. Would love companies such as, the gear that I'm using, the camping, the hiking, the shoes, the clothes, sponsorships are awesome. I think the more people who either get involved financially within a financial investment, or, Keith, we're praying for you, or, just a pat on the back, or watch my video content on YouTube, right? Get my numbers up, get my subscriber numbers up. So Walking the Path is the YouTube
Yeah, if you use this
section.
code here that goes to the promo video,
Yeah, it'll take you.
it'll
Yeah,
take you to your YouTube channel.
yeah, it actually will.
So,
And so all that's valuable. And so any support, again, financial, emotional, spiritual, all welcome. Just let me know that you're doing it. So kind of wrote like a comment in a video, or send me, tag me on LinkedIn, say, hey, we're all for you. And then have conversations with me. Join me on Trail to Transformation, my own podcast. Join me. Let me know how you, in your own space, are supporting veterans in your area, and even if you're not, how you would like to. So that's always a good conversation to have.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story and your journey with us. And I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for your service as well.
Thank you.
So, hopefully, we will can get you some sponsors because this will be airing on Monday, and so let's see what we can do because I always think we can do more together. So, thank
Absolutely.
you
Do
so
appreciate it.
much.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Everybody, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next time.